Hey, in this video I'll show you how to create a smooth, Apple-style liquid glass transition in After Effects. We'll go step by step and build a clean glass look with nice refraction and fluid animation. Of course, you'll find the fully prepared project file in the description, ready to use however you like. We've also added this transition to our free liquid glass kit, so you can apply it in one click and customize it to fit your project. Alright, let's get started. First, create a shape layer and add an ellipse with a fill. I'm going to name this shape Main Ellipse. Go to the size parameter and set it to around 1000. Next, let's animate the scale. Press S to quickly reveal the scale property. Add 4 keyframes. The ellipse will appear, shrink slightly, and then scale up beyond the edges of the screen. Awesome. Now, select all the keyframes and press F9 to ease them. Then open the graph editor, switch to Edit Speed Graph, and shape the curve similar to what you see here. Perfect. As you've probably noticed, in iOS 26 animations feel much more fluid and responsive. Elements subtly react to movement. They stretch, compress, and adapt, which makes the interface feel alive. So instead of keeping our ellipse perfectly rigid, let's add a bit of elasticity to make it feel more dynamic. To do that, create a null object and parent the main ellipse to it. Open the scale property and add your first keyframe. Move a few frames forward, turn off constrained proportions so we can control the scale values on X and Y independently, and start stretching or compressing the ellipse like I'm doing here. Try to make the ellipse slightly stretch when scaling up and gently compress when scaling down. Now select all the keyframes and press F9. Great! Now the ellipse feels much more dynamic and responsive. By the way, we recently released a new Bento titles pack for After Effects and Premiere Pro. It includes over 70 clean and modern title animations across 3 categories: minimal, kinetic, and trendy, so it's easy to find the right style for your project. Everything is fully customizable with smart auto boxes and auto scaling, so the titles adapt nicely to any composition size or aspect ratio. And with the convenient extension, you can add them in one click and customize them in seconds. We also released a free demo version with 10 title animations, so you can try it out first. You'll find everything through the links in the description or on bentomotion.com, where you can also explore more packs and free useful resources. And with our universal license, you keep the templates forever with no subscription needed and can use them commercially in unlimited projects for unlimited clients. Alright, let's get back to the tutorial. Now let's create the glass effect. To do this, make the ellipse an adjustment layer. Next, add fast blur. Increase the scale using transform, and apply a subtle white tint. Awesome. Then duplicate the ellipse and rename it Map. Remove all keyframes from the map layer, then parent it to the main ellipse to keep everything in sync. Also, turn off the adjustment layer for the map and remove all effects except fast blur. Increase the blur to around 35, add a stroke, and turn off the fill. Now hide the map layer and apply the displacement map effect to the ellipse. Set the map layer as the displacement map and change the source to effects and masks. Set both horizontal and vertical displacement to luminance, and now you can control the distortion. I'm going to set this to 350 and 250. Great! You can use any background you like, but for this tutorial, I'm going to create a dark background with a glow at the bottom. To do that, I'll create a solid and apply a dark blue fill to it. Then, I'll create an ellipse shape, stretch it slightly, and move it toward the bottom of the composition. I'll also add a fill and a fast blur. Looks interesting. Now let's add some highlights. First, duplicate the map layer, rename it to stroke, and make it visible. Reduce the stroke width and fast blur. Then add fill and set matte using main ellipse as the matte. And don't forget to lower the opacity to around 15%. Now duplicate the stroke layer and rename it to Edge Glow. Set the opacity back to 100%. Make the stroke thicker and increase the fast blur a bit. Also, let's add a glow effect and set the glow radius to around 65. If you want the glow to appear only inside the shape, move the glow effect above set matte. And make sure to set the blending mode to add. Now create a new ellipse shape. Scale it up and move it so it slightly overlaps the top of the main ellipse. And rename it Mask. Add a fast blur to the mask, then use it as a matte for the edge glow layer. Great. Now you can fine-tune the edge glow using the mask's position and size. Next, select both the edge glow and the mask layers and duplicate them. Now adjust the position and size of the second mask. Make sure to parent both mask layers to the main ellipse. Perfect. Now create another ellipse shape. Adjust its size and position so it slightly touches the top of the main ellipse. And let's rename it Soft Light. Add a white fill. Adjust the blur to create a soft light effect. And apply set matte using main ellipse as the source layer. And don't forget to parent soft light to the main ellipse. Now let's animate the fast blur slightly so it softens as the main ellipse scales up. Go to the moment where the main ellipse starts expanding and set a keyframe for the blur radius. Now add another keyframe when the main ellipse moves beyond the edges of the screen, and increase the blur value to about twice as much. Select the keyframes and press F9. Great! Now duplicate the soft light layer and move it down so the glow appears on both sides. This already looks good, but let's take it further by adding some chromatic aberration for a more interesting lighting effect. Duplicate one of the soft light layers 2 times and add R, G, and B to the end of each layer name. Then set their colors to red, green, and blue. Select all 3 layers and change the blending mode to screen. For a cleaner result, move them below the edge glow layers. To create that chromatic aberration look, slightly offset the red and blue layers in opposite directions. The more you separate them, the stronger the effect becomes. Looks good. Now repeat the same process for the second soft light layer. Next, let's add one more highlight to make the lighting more expressive. Duplicate the top soft light, change its color to white, and set the blending mode to add. Let's rename it Soft Light 3. Remove the blur radius animation, lower the blur value, and scale the shape down so it slightly touches the top of the main ellipse. Now to add more dynamics, let's add some rotation. To do this, open the rotation property of the main ellipse and set it to 40 degrees. Now let's add some keyframes to animate the rotation. After that, select the keyframes and press F9, then open the graph editor and adjust the animation curve roughly like this. Perfect! That already looks even better. Now we're going to animate the blur inside the ellipse and set up the transition to the placeholder. So for convenience, let's temporarily bring the background image back. Find the moment when the ellipse starts getting smaller and add your first keyframe to blur radius. Then move a bit forward to where the ellipse begins scaling up, add another keyframe, and set the blur radius to 100. Make sure to select the keyframes and hit F9 for smoother animation. Now let's create the placeholder composition and set up a simple scene. Create a solid and add a fill effect. Then duplicate the solid and apply the grid effect. Make the grid a bit larger and thinner and tweak the color. Create an ellipse shape, make it larger, and adjust the stroke thickness. Then apply fill and fast blur so it looks like a soft shadow. Add some text and adjust the position and color. Great! Now let's go back to our main composition. Add the placeholder composition to the timeline and position it so it begins around frame 22. Then apply the Set Matte effect to the placeholder layer and choose Main Ellipse as the matte source. Alright, I'll bring my background back. Now let's make a nice reveal animation for the placeholder. First, animate the opacity, then select the keyframes and press F9. Add the fast blur effect and move it above the Set Matte effect. Now let's animate the blur so the image gradually comes into focus. Then select the keyframes, press F9, and adjust the animation curve in the graph editor. Awesome. Now add the transform effect and move it above all the other effects. Let's animate the scale so the placeholder zooms out. Set the first keyframe when the ellipse starts to scale up, and the second one once it goes beyond the composition edges or even a bit further. Then set the first keyframe value to around 180. Finally, adjust the curve in the graph editor like this. Now let's add the most interesting effect, CC Lens. Place it between the fast blur and transform effects. Go to the moment when the ellipse starts scaling up. In my case, that's around frame 27. Add the first keyframe and set its value to 16. Then move to around frame 59 when the ellipse goes beyond the edges of the composition. Add another keyframe and set the value to 500. Now select the keyframes, press F9, and open the graph editor. But for this animation, let's switch to Edit Value Graph, since it will be more convenient. Adjust the graph similar to what you see here. You can also tweak the graph to refine the animation even more. Great! But as you can see with CC Lens, the image doesn't fully straighten out. To fix this, simply animate the convergence parameter. Now let's add a subtle chromatic aberration effect. To begin, add the Shift Channels effect to the placeholder. Keep only the red channel and set the green and blue channels to full off. Now let's add R to the layer name to indicate the color. Duplicate the layer twice and arrange the copies in the same order as mine, so you end up with R, G, and B. For the green layer in Shift Channels, keep only the green channel and set the others to full off. Then do the same for the blue layer, leaving only the blue channel enabled. Now select the red and green layers and set their blending mode to screen. Awesome. Now to make the effect visible, let's reveal the keyframes for the red and blue layers. Select the last size keyframe of the CC glass effect and open the graph editor. Let's switch back to the edit speed graph. And now let's tweak the graph and move the animation peak slightly to the right. Then do the same for the blue layer, but move the animation peak slightly to the left instead. Great. Now, with all three color channels slightly out of sync, we get a really nice chromatic aberration effect. And finally, let's add a subtle edge blur to complete the lens effect. To do that, duplicate the map layer and rename it to Map Blur. Temporarily make the layer visible and move it above our placeholders. Now increase the stroke and blur values. The area where you can see the blurred shape will become our blur, so be careful not to increase it too much. Otherwise, it may cover the placeholder completely. Now hide the layer and duplicate the map layer once more. Rename it to Mask and temporarily make it visible as well. Then remove the fast blur effect, turn on fill and turn off stroke so it becomes a solid ellipse mask. Next, create a new adjustment layer and place it above our placeholders. Let's rename it to Edge Blur. Add the camera lens blur effect. Select our map blur layer as the blur map, and set source to Effects and Masks. If you want a smoother and more refined blur, you can set the shape value to decagon. However, this may use more of your computer's resources, so you can leave it at hexagon if you prefer. Now increase the blur radius and let's see how it looks. As you can see, everything works, but there's some unwanted blur extending beyond the edges. So just use the mask we created earlier to crop the adjustment layer. Great. Now let's animate the blur radius so the blur doesn't stay visible all the time. Place the first keyframe at the moment the ellipse starts to scale up and set its value to 0. Then move a little further forward, to the point where it has already scaled up a bit, and set the value to 40. Then move further forward and set the value back to 0. Now select all the keyframes and press F9. Let's see what we ended up with. Awesome! Let's drop in some media and see how this transition looks in practice. Great! Hope you enjoyed this video. Check the links in the description for the full project file with all sound effects included. Also, feel free to visit our website, bentomotion.com, where you'll find more awesome packs and free useful items. And don't forget to like and subscribe, it really helps a lot. Thanks for watching, and see you soon!